Hebrews 11, verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises, Abraham, was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, "Through Isaac shall your offspring be named." Abraham considered God was even able to raise him from the dead, Isaac back from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. By faith, Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau, who were Isaac's sons, Abraham's grandsons, Jacob and Esau. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each one of the sons of Joseph. So Joseph is the son of Jacob. And now Jacob blesses his son Joseph and Joseph's sons, which are Jacob's grandsons. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave directions concerning his bones. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that the child was beautiful and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He, Moses, considered the reproach of Christ greater than the wealth of the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the what? The reward. Underline verse 27. By faith he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them. For many of us, our lives are caught in the reality of a no man's land, of not knowing if we have a relationship with God, is it the right relationship with God? And if I have faith in God, is that faith the right kind of faith that pleases God? So that God will continue to love me, walk with me, do all these things. Many times we think, even like the woman this morning between services, she's like, I don't know anything about God, I don't know anything about religion, I don't know anything about anything. We think, these are Bible people, Abraham, like these are studs. Like they're in the Bible. Like I can't live like that. I can't live like these people. Well, understand this. These people that you're thinking of had struggles just like me and you. These people you're thinking of lived real lives. And so chapter 11 is telling us these people like me and you didn't have some mystical faith that's unreachable, untouchable by real people like me and you. They access the same God in their real world. Which means, be encouraged by this, that means that you can walk with God too. It's not impossible. It's not mystical. It's not for like super hyper religious people like your pastor. Because we think, oh, pastors, wow. Like God glows them as they walk around or whatever, and they hover over the earth. Well, I do, but most people don't. No, all of us go, I wonder if my faith is the right faith. I wonder if I've got enough faith to walk with God. How do I know I'm really pleasing God? And those are good questions, but I want you to understand this. You can walk with God. How do you know that? Because other people that are just like me and you walked with God. The whole point of chapter 11 is to say, here's people that had a tough time. Do you have a tough time? Good, because God can walk with you through your tough time. Are you imperfect? Good, because these people are imperfect too. Walk like these guys and you'll please God. And so we come to number 1. Abraham's faith was greater than his confusion. Abraham's faith was greater than his confusion. So I'm going to lay something down right here. I want you to listen to me really carefully. This first point might change your life. And I'm not saying that to overspeak. I'm saying that because this first point, if you can absorb what I'm saying, this might change your entire life. This might change your entire walk with God. And I don't say that sarcastically. I say that in truth. Because if you can grasp this, this might change everything about how you view your walk with God. For this reason, we think, some of us, when we come to know God, things will be clear. Oh, I know God now. God knows everything. God controls everything. So he will make a path for me and everything will be clear. Watch. All of a sudden, we get into confusing times. Why is my relationship with my wife so bad? Why is my husband so lame? Why don't my kids listen? I want to put them in a shoebox and ship them somewhere. Why is my job so lame? Why is my employer like this? Why do I have a supervisor that's less qualified than me? Why am I in the situation I'm in? Watch, here's what happens. Ready? Walk with me. We think, God, if I know God, if I have true faith in God, things will be clear, a path will be plowed for me, everything will be great. And then we get into confusion and we go, whoa, what just happened? Maybe I don't have a relationship with God. Maybe my faith's not real. Maybe my faith, if I have any, is not enough. And I'm going to break something to you right now. Ready? Faith by definition means you don't have all the information. Faith by definition means if you're walking in faith, there's a God who knows the future and you don't. That means you're walking into the unknown. What that means is, by nature, faith induces confusion. So if you're sitting in here, if you're listening to me online going, I'm super confused about my walk with God, I don't even know if I walk with God, congratulations, you're probably a Christian. Listen, confusion in your life by nature is part of the faith walk. You can't have faith and not be confused at some point. You can't. It doesn't go together. So don't think, I'm confused, I must not have a real walk with God. The fact that if you're confused about something could lend itself to the idea that you're really walking with God because you're confused. God will put you in situations where you have no idea what to do. I don't even know how to save my marriage. I have no idea how to parent my kids. I have no idea how to do this job. The fact the guy's over me and I'm more qualified drives me insane. Well, guess what? The reason God puts somebody over you is to grind you into being more like Christ. It should cause you confusion because God wants you to not have all the answers because you don't, not have all the strength because you don't. God will give you what you need for the moment and will walk you through difficulty so that, watch, when you look back on your difficulty, you see the faithfulness of God. If there comes a point where you're never confused and you know everything and you're God, cool, good for you. But that day never comes because God expects you to walk with him in faith. And when you get through it, you see the faithfulness of God. Now watch. All of a sudden now you have more faith for the future because you've seen the faithfulness of God in the past. So God's purpose for you in going through difficulty isn't to just make you frustrated, it's to teach you to rely on God. Because if you can do it all yourself, what's the point in walking with God? But if you have to rely on God, that's going to mean at points you're going to be confused. And we are going to see the ultimate example of confusion today with a guy named Abraham. Abraham was 75 years old, and Sarah, his wife, was 65, when God promised he would become the father of a great nation. We see that in Genesis chapter 12. We looked at it last week. After 25 years of infertility, God miraculously allowed Sarah to birth Isaac at 90 years old. Woo-hoo! We looked at that last week, but I want to make this point in regards to confusion and faith. Abraham, 75. His wife, 65. They're both past childbearing years. Their bodies are not going there anymore. Watch. God at that age goes, you're going to be a father of a great nation. Abraham goes, awesome. I'm kind of past the time, but I believe you. Watch what happens here. Ready? All of a sudden there's clarity in Abraham's life. Oh, God showed up. I'm going to have a child, even though I don't know how that's going to happen. My wife's ready to go to the nursing home, not the nursery, right? Talked about it last week, but watch this. There's clarity for a moment. 1 year, no baby. 5 years, no baby. 10 years, no baby. 15 years, no baby. 20 years, no baby. 22 years, no baby. He's been waiting in infertility post 75 years old, longer than some of us in this room have been alive. He now has waited 25 years. He is 99 and a half years old. So here's my point. Imagine going from 75 to 100, waiting for your child. You want to talk about confusing. Did God show up? Did I eat was there some magical mushrooms on the pizza? Am I tripping out? Maybe that wasn't God. Nope, it was God. But you're confused because God's testing your faith. He waits to 100, finally has Isaac. Okay? So that's the backstory. Total confusion, but God shows up after 25 years of infertility, after he spent his whole life being infertile. Now he has his one son, Isaac, his son of promise. Now let's see what God does with that son of promise. Now there's clarity. Now son here. Now Abraham's all of a sudden like, good, cool. I got a son. This is where my boy's going to have other kids. He's going to get married to some nice young lady around the way. He's ready. Abraham's ready for his grandchildren to be born. Now look what God does. After 25 years of infertility, God miraculously allowed Sarah to birth Isaac at 90 years old. When Isaac was a marriageable age in his teens or 20s, God asked Abraham to sacrifice his only son as a burnt offering. What? You got a son who's probably, so Isaac's not an infant, he's not a toddler, he's not a little boy, he's probably 13, 14, 15 years old, could have been maybe even 20-ish. So he's a young man. He's getting ready to be married. So for most of history, when you entered your teen years, you were getting ready to get the party going. Like there wasn't this weird thing like in our culture where the area of stupidity are called adolescence goes on forever. Like you could live from 13 to 130 as a child in our society. Like you never have to grow up. You can be like Peter Pan in tights for your whole life. Well, understand, in our society where we extend this, we fabricate this adolescence, where we give an excuse, oh, they're only 13, oh, they're only 16, oh, they're only 20, oh, they're only 57. Our culture makes excuses for immaturity. For most cultures, up till ours, it was like, hey, you're 15, 16, go work with your dad out in the field. Go learn a skill. Go work with mom. Go learn something that's of value. Because you knew in a couple of years, you might be having your own kids, and you're starting your own home. So understand that Isaac is right at that cusp of that. He's probably 13, 14, 15. Abraham's looking at his strong young son growing up in his home, and Abraham's going, all right, this is it. Those of us that are going to be grandparents someday, we're like, let's get going. I want to see my grandkids. That's where he's at mentally, Abraham. Then God goes, you know what I want you to do, Abraham? I want you to take your son, and I want you to kill him. And not only do I want you to kill him, but I want you to burn him to ashes. Are you insane? What? God has never asked for human sacrifice. Other cultures did it. Abraham came from a baby-killing, human sacrificing culture from Babylon. So it wasn't lost on Abraham what God was asking him to do. He knew exactly what it was. But it didn't make sense to him, one, because he gave him his son, and two, he's asking him to actually burn him to ashes, which means there's no hope that he's going to survive. So listen to me. In total confusion of a level that you and I can't possibly fathom, you want to talk about the highest level of confusion? Abraham's there. But he's still walking with God. Let's see what happens in this story. If you have your Bibles, turn to the first book, Genesis 22. Way in the front, right after the table of contents, Genesis 22. Genesis 22, verse 1. This is actually the story that Hebrews is referencing. Let's look at what happens here. Genesis 22, 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And Abraham said, here I am. And God said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love. Why in the world did God have to tell him in triplicate? There's only one guy. I love God does this, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to get to it. Watch this. God goes, Abraham, yep, here, I'm right here. Take your son. Okay, I know who that is because there's only one. Your only son, Isaac. Yep, I know who that is. It's that guy right there. The son you love. Yep, my only one son, Isaac, whom I love. What's your point, God, for the third time? And God actually has a point. And there's a reason he does it 3 times, because he's going to make a point out of this. Your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you. Verse 3, right here, boom, here's where it hits. Verse 3 could say, and Abraham said, forget that. You're crazy. I must be going insane. God would never ask for something so barbaric or satanic as to kill somebody else as a sacrifice to him. What kind of barbaric God does something so insane? That's like what cults do. That's like weird, crazy junk. And you'd be correct. And that's the confusion that's going through Abraham's head. But let's see what Abraham does. So, Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men, who were helpers in his clan, with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and he saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and he laid it on his son Isaac. And he took in his hand the fire, which is like the flint and the stuff they'd use to make fire, and the knife. And so both of them went together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, imagine this conversation. You're walking with your son. He's carrying the wood. You're walking with the flint and the stuff you're going to make fire with, and a knife. So, Father, where are we going? That's exactly the conversation that he has with his dad. Verse 7, and Isaac said to his father Abraham, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went, both of them together, and when they had come to the place of where God had told him, Abraham built an altar there, and he laid the wood in order, and he bound his son, Isaac, and he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And Abraham said, here I am. Said, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear what? God. Seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. As it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Imagine the confusion going through Abraham's head when he had to come to a point where he said, you know what? God asked me to kill my son, but he had the faith that God, out of the ashes, could raise his son up from death. So Abraham has this faith in God, even though he's unbelievably confused. And let me point this out to you as it relates to your walk of faith. You can't be more confused than Abraham was, yet Abraham was totally walking with God in faith. There will come points in your life where you will be totally confused. You'll be confused about relationships, be confused about your job, you'll be confused about where to move, and it should never be away from the orchard. There'll be totally confusing things. There will be things you just have no answers for. Good. You want to know something? You're probably walking with God. I want that to encourage you, because many times we get discouraged in our confusion and we go, things aren't clear. I don't even know if I trust God, one, or if you have a relationship with God, two. Understand, confusion sometimes means you're in the exact right place. Because there is no faith without testing. Listen to me. You cannot say you have faith in God without being tested in that faith. Because faith, by definition, means trust in things that you can't see or control, which is your future. So when you walk with God through tough spots, through areas in your life that you feel like you're going to fail, stay the course. Feel like your marriage is going to fail? Stay the course. Don't cheat. You feel like you need more money at your job and you know you could steal without getting caught? Stay the course and have integrity. Having trouble with your kids? You want to punch them in the face? Don't do that. But stay the course. Your kids don't want to listen to you. The kids aren't going to follow Jesus, and you're freaking out because blah, blah, blah. Maybe I should just give them everything they want so they'll follow Jesus. Nope, stay the course. You stay the course and let God handle the results. Because when you start saying, I got to handle it myself, I got to have control, I got to be God for me, that's when your life goes off course. Because when we get in those sticky, tight spots and life starts to grind against us and we want to lose hope and we want to lose faith, God goes, stay the course. And we get ground up, and all of a sudden we come through and there's clarity. And we look back and see the goodness of God. And we didn't give up. We didn't stop. We stuck to the course. Abraham did that. And God blessed him. There is no faith without testing. So don't think in your life, I can get a walk with God without difficulty or without confusion. It's on its way if it's not here yet. And if you're in it right now, be encouraged that you're walking with God, even in confusion. Actually, here's a picture of what it probably looked like. And I want you to see this moment that Abraham's going to slaughter his son and burn him. And imagine this moment right here for you, walking with the son that you love, the son of your promise, the son of everything you've placed your hope in, and this is the moment you've come to with God. And here's my issue as you look at this picture. Understand this. The blessings of God can become idols that block God. You want to know the reason God asked him 3 times, take your son, your only son Isaac, the son that you love. You want to know why he did that? When there's only one son, he wasn't confused about what son he was talking about. Is because imagine watching your son grow, going, all of my hope is in this young man. Isaac hits 5 years old. Isaac hits 7. Isaac hits 10. Isaac hits 12. Isaac starts to move into puberty, into becoming a man. And Abraham, imagine him just watching his son grow and going, God is so good. But watch what happens. Sometimes the blessings of God can block God. The things you prayed for and God blesses you with, be very careful that you start worshiping and following those things rather than the God that gave you those things. I'll tell you what's deceptive. Relationships. Because some of us are relational and we find all of our value in who likes us or who loves us or who gives us attention. So we chase after relationships. For some of us, it's wealth. Remember when you were dirt poor? I do. And you were like, if I could just make 30 grand this year, oh my gosh, 30, geez, I'd live like a king. I eat like Honey Nut Cheerios and stuff rather than regular Cheerios. And then God goes, cool, I'll give you 30 G's. Make 30 G's this year. And after you get 30 G's, you're like, I think I need a new car. You're like, I can't make enough. I'm probably going to need 80, Jesus. And a few years goes by, you become the supervisor at work. You're making 80 G's. You're like, Jesus, I make $80,000. Then you get a new house out in the vineyard. You're like, man, 80 G's ain't making it, Jesus. I might need 7 figures. And Jesus goes, no problem. All of a sudden, you're making 7 figures. You're a millionaire. You're driving your Ferrari to your second house in Malibu, praising Jesus all the way at a high rate of speed. And you know what? God's good with it. Hey, God gives wealth. God gives relationships. There's nothing wrong with that. But be very careful about this, is that what God gives you grows into something that blocks God. Because sometimes the blessings of God, unchecked in your heart, can become idols. And here's the point. Ready? Here's a heart check. So God takes your daughter away from you and she dies. Are you going to hate God? God takes your husband away from you. You going to hate God? Maybe don't answer that right now if you're in a fight. God takes your sweet job away. So you lose the Ferrari and you lose your second house. And you have to go back to living in an apartment where you came from 40 years ago. You going to hate God now? See, it's only until God takes away something that our heart is addicted to that we all of a sudden go into withdrawals. I can't live without all this money. I can't live without that car. I can't live without him. I can't live without her. I can't live without my son. Yeah, you can. The only reason you can't is if that's who you're living for. And when your heart is intoxicated with something other than God, God goes, I'm going to put you to the test, son. You know your only son? You know your only son, Isaac? You know the son that you love? You know the son that you've been watching grow up? I want you to kill him. What? And the issue was, God didn't need a sacrifice. God needed Abraham's heart. And over time, it's like a tree that you plant in your front yard. Remember that little sapling you planted in your front yard? And you're like, I can't wait for it to grow. You till it, you water it, and you watch this little tree grow. And you're so happy to watch it grow. And it's this beautiful little tree that grows. But after a while, it takes over the whole front yard and blocks the sun. And what was beautiful in the beginning that you tended and loved and was a blessing to you, now has become a curse to you because you love something that's not God. And so what God does is he sometimes will go, I'm going to take that away. And then we'll see where your heart is. Now, for many of us, that causes desperation in our hearts. We go, don't take him, her, it away. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you love stuff more than you love the God who gave you stuff, it shows that your heart's in the wrong place. So there is no true faith walk with God unless there's difficulty. And God builds difficulty into your life so that if you stay the course, you will see the goodness of God in this life. Isn't that beautiful? Tough, but true. And that's exactly what happened to Abraham. Abraham's faith was greater than his confusion. Number 2, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph's faith was greater than the unknown. So this is their grandson, Abraham's son, grandsons, and great-grandsons. Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph's faith was greater than the unknown. As the son of Abraham, Isaac continued his father's faith and legacy for his sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel, so Jacob's name was changed by God to Israel. Jacob had 2 names, Jacob and Israel. Jacob worshiped God to his deathbed, blessing Joseph, who was Jacob's son, and his grandsons, Joseph's sons. Joseph was so confident in God that he gave future instructions to take his bones to Canaan when God rescued Israel out of Egypt. Isn't that crazy? Joseph had so much faith in God, he goes, I'm going to die soon. Future generations, don't leave my bones here because I know God's going to take you from being slaves to getting your own land. So watch, when God does that, I'll be dead in the dust. Take my bones in a jar to Canaan with you. Because why? Because I know even when I'm dead, God's good on his promise. Now that's faith. I got so much faith. When I'm dead and in the dust, make sure you take my bones with you because I know God's going to bring you out of slavery and take you to the promised land. Though believers can't have faith for their kids, they can live lives in hope their faith is caught by their kids. So let me encourage you this morning. You got some tough kids, which if you got kids, the answer is yes. Or you got tough grandkids. Your kids have left you with their kids and you got to raise them. Let me encourage you with this. Turn to Proverbs 22. It's right in the middle of your Bible. Proverbs 22:6. It's It's right after the book of Psalms, which is smack in the middle of your Bible. Proverbs 22:6. Underline this in your Bible. Let this encourage you, parents and grandparents. Proverbs 22:6. Even if you're single in here and you're like, I'm not planning on having kids for 100 years. Cool. Underline this anyway. Because at some point you'll have kids and you'll go, Jesus, what is going on? Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And let me encourage you with this. This isn't saying that if you live for God, your kids will live for God. This isn't saying if you perfectly walk with God, then your kids have to walk with God. What this is saying is an encouragement of a principle that says if you show diligence to walk with God, your kids see living faith in you and they go, you know what, I can do it too. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. What it means is you have to be faithful. Those are two different things. God doesn't expect perfection, but he expects you to be faithful, which means keep walking. Keep walking with me. Stay the course, son. Stay the course, daughter. It means that if you got daughters in your home and you're the wife of the home and you got daughters growing up underneath you, they need to see you love your husband. They need to see you talk respectfully and lovingly about your husband, because guess what? You're training your daughters in how to interact with their future husband. What we do is we act out how we've been trained at home. That is why it's generational dysfunction many times unless God steps in. That's why, because for the first 20 years of your life, you're trained day in and day out about how women interact with their husbands. If you got young men coming up in your home and you're a father at home, understand that you're training your son how to interact with his wife, how to not be violent when you're mad or when you're being disrespected, how to not toss your kids or your wife around when you're drunk. You as a man, as the leader of your home, have to set the tone of stability for your home. That your wife is secure at home, that your kids are secure at home. You're never going to have a perfect home. You're never going to be a perfect guy, but guess what? You can be faithful. So watch. What this verse is saying is when training up doesn't mean like sitting down and having a lesson. It means like daughters see their moms and go, you know what? I know mom's not perfect, but man, she's doing her best to live for Jesus, and that's how I want to be when I get my own home. Young men go, you know what? Sometimes mom's tough to live with, but dad handles it. And I like that. I like instead of going nuts or complaining about his job because he hates it every day, or complaining about his wife because they're going through tough times, he stays the course for Jesus. And that's the kind of man I want to be. That's what it means to train up your children. It doesn't mean guarantee they'll walk with God, because salvation is an individual miracle of God. God has to draw your kids anyway. So it's not up to you, but the point here is that, man, if you plow the way for your kids, it makes it a whole lot easier to follow God when mom and dad are following God. You don't have to be perfect, you just got to be faithful. Everybody with me? I'm not asking for impossible, I'm just asking for faithful. And that's exactly what Abraham did. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob/Israel. Israel had 12 sons who became the 12 tribes of Israel from a guy named Israel/Jacob. One of those sons was Joseph, coat of many colors Joseph. This is a heritage of faith. No perfect people, but faithful people. Faith like you and I can have as well. Believers walk by faith, not by sight. This desire to please God affects all areas of life: dating, child rearing, job interactions, recreation, retirement, etc., though others won't understand. Let me help you. There's no such thing as retirement. Let me break your 65-year-old heart. Okay? Get ready. You can stop doing your 9 to 5, but you can never stop doing your 24/7, which is serving God. You can stop your bi-weekly pay job, but you never stop serving God. You can retire from your pay job, but your service to God never ends until you're dead. There is no retirement in serving God. You live your whole life, whether it's you work in Orange County or you work at home or whatever you do, that might be your job for the time being, but you never stop serving God. There's never a retirement age in serving God. You do that till the day you're dead in whatever capacity you can. So when you get in your Winnebago and you end up in Kansas and you're looking at pretty rocks on the side of the road or whatever you plan on doing for your vacation or your retirement or whatever, understand that you might be retired from your job in Orange County or in Temecula, but you never retire from serving God. Believers are to set their minds on things above, and that affects their life below. When you go through tough things, don't keep staring at the tough things. Stare at the solution. And you'll make it through the tough things because you're looking ahead, not down. So when you set your mind on things above, it affects your life below. So you keep your mind above rather than here, and you'll make it through. Lastly, Moses' faith was greater than his temptations. So I want to encourage you lastly, you got temptations? Sexual, financial, you feel like, you know what, I could rip my company off and they would never even know. I'm the stinking auditor. And I don't get paid enough for what I do. I think I should take a little something off the top or the bottom or the middle. Guess what? You have integrity. You stay the course. I could cheat at school. Super easy. Oh my gosh. My teacher's blind and deaf. Okay, cool. You could cheat super easy. I get it. Stay the course. Have integrity. Because why? Because we live for God, not for the moment. We live for what? We live for God, not for what's easy. And that's exactly what Moses did. He had it easy. He chose the hard way. When the Egyptian Pharaoh decreed male infanticide, which is what happened when Moses was born, that all the males should die, Moses' parents trusted God and put their son in a basket in the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter eventually found him, and he was raised for 3 years by his mother, then as royalty. As Egyptian royalty, he had the best education of his day. While he learned as an Egyptian, he lived like an Israelite. Though his nurture was decadence and sin, Moses could have whatever he wanted. He could have had any woman he wanted. He could have had any finances he wanted. He was a prince, and at this point, even people that opposed Moses could have been put to death and stuffed in the ground, and he had zero accountability. Imagine you having zero accountability. You could sleep with whoever you wanted to. You could take money from whoever you wanted to. Your flesh knows no bounds. Think about your life in that scenario. Now think about Moses. He was in that scenario. He said no to his flesh, and he chose restraint and godliness instead. And it showed that Moses was willing to walk in faith rather than what pleased his flesh. He overcame his temptations, not because they weren't real, but because God was more real to him than his flesh. Nurture is exhibited by upbringing, but nature is exposed by action. So let me encourage you with this. You might grow up in a train wreck of a home. Dad was an alcoholic. Mom slept around or whatever. Understand, you don't have to live out the way your parents were. You might have had an upbringing that was messed up, but that doesn't mean your future has to be messed up. You can stop and please God now, and you can change the whole course of the lineage of the people who come after you because you're the one that stayed the course with God. Moses overcame his temptations. They were legit, just like you and me. We face real temptations, but through the power of God, we can get through them and honor God. Better than your drinking, better than your drug habit, better than the porn in your life. God is better than those things. He can help you overcome your weaknesses as long as you're willing to walk through it with him. Jesus, help me. In your moment of weakness, Jesus, help. I don't want to do this. I want to please you. Help me get through it. And God is faithful to you because he loves you. Moses walked and talked like an Egyptian. Anybody? Bangles from the 80s? If you're too young to know, Google walk like an Egyptian, you'll know what I'm talking about. Moses walked and talked like an Egyptian, but had the heart of a man of God that endured through temptation to save others. Moses' identity wasn't in his looks or his livelihood, but in living for his Lord. Woo! Isn't that beautiful? I want to encourage you with that. If you're in confusion, good, you're probably following God. You got a lot of temptations, good, you're probably following Jesus. You're walking out into the unknown, good. You're probably following God. God will show himself faithful as you walk with him.